This is America, but sometimes it turns into this.
Where are they? This is our
Stand up for our God-given unalienable rights.
After the results of the elections, the Capitol was stormed with Trump supporters who disrupted the joint session of Congress assembled to count electoral votes to formalize Joe Biden's victory. The inauguration of America's 46th president began with the heightened security measures in Washington, D.C., COVID-19 precautions, and the absence of the outgoing president Donald Trump.
So, have a good life. We will see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
These are Trump's last words as a president of the United States. Trump lives with the lowest approval ratings of any president after one term in history of scientific polling.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
After being sworn in, Joe Biden delivered an inaugural address and pledged to be a president for all Americans, including those who didn't support his campaign. At the end of the day, now officially as a president, Biden began signing different orders as he promised to American people. He returned the U.S. to Paris Climate Agreement, signed executive orders on COVID-19 restrictions and racial equity. Joe Biden had his first call with Vladimir Putin a few days after his inauguration to discuss the extension of New START nuclear arms control treaty and also to raise matters of concerns regarding Russia's leading opposition figure Alexei Navalny case. Also, SolarWinds hacked reports of Russia placing bounties on United States soldiers in Afghanistan and the treatment of protesters by Russian security forces. A month later, Biden's administration imposed sanctions on Russia for the poisoning and imprisonment of Alexei Navalny. The US has warned Russia that there will be consequences if Navalny dies in jail. Russia viewed these accusations as an attempt to intervene in Russia's internal politics and called it a violation of law. But before diving into tense relations and public accusations, here are some good things. The United States has extended the New START nuclear arms control treaty with Russia for 5 years, which is the last remaining nuclear arms deal between Russia and America, and its demise would have ended all limits on deployments of strategic nuclear warheads and delivery systems. But the friendly relations end here, as Joe Biden said that Vladimir Putin doesn't have a soul and is a killer. Biden has accused Donald Trump of being too weak on Russia, accusing him of being Putin's puppy. And now, as the head of the country, Biden says that Russia's president will pay a price for directing efforts to undermine 2020 US elections. The Office of Director of National Intelligence found that Russia pursued efforts aiming at denigrating President Biden's candidacy and the Democratic Party, supporting former President Donald Trump.
So you know Vladimir Putin, you think he's a killer?
I do.
So what price must he pay?
The price he's going to pay, well, you'll see shortly.
As a response, Putin wished Biden a good health.
Будьте здоровы. Я желаю ему здоровья. Говорю это без иронии, без шуток.
Putin said that he's ready to talk about this with President Biden live on TV during an open discussion. And regarding the killer nickname, Putin said, quote, "We always see our own qualities in other people," and hold the joke.
В детстве мы во дворе, когда спорили друг с другом, мы говорили так. Кто как обзывается, тот так и называется.
Moscow has recalled its ambassador to the United States to analyze the situation. Biden promised that very soon Russia would pay a price, and a month after his announcement came the new sanctions against Russia. President Biden said he signed an executive order authorizing new measures, including sanctions against Russia, in response to allegations that Moscow meddled in the elections.
I spoke with President Putin of Russia about the nature of our relationship, the relationship between our two countries. And I was candid, respectful. Conversation was candid and respectful. Two great powers with significant responsibility for global stability.
Then Biden administration expelled 10 Russian diplomats.
The United States is not looking to kick off a cycle of escalation and conflict with Russia. We want a stable, predictable relationship. If Russia continues to interfere with our democracy, I'm prepared to take further actions to respond.
Russia denies all the allegations and this time is responding without jokes. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov outlined Moscow's response to US sanctions and said that they will limit and ban all the activities of US foundations in the country.
В ответ мы, конечно же, ограничивали работу дипломатов США в России.
Maria Zakharova stressed that US is now in this list of unfriendly states. This is not an aggressive step against America, Zakharova says, but a response to aggressive actions of the United States. Putin signed a law to limit the number of local staff working at foreign diplomatic missions and other agencies.
Где-то даже шизофренически проскакивают нотки в высказываниях некоторых деятелей в Вашингтоне.
Lavrov calls White House statements on anti-Russia sanctions schizophrenic and said that recently the White House spokesman Jen Psaki said that the sanctions on Russia will continue, that the sanctions are having roughly the effect that Washington was hoping for.
Ну, я даже не могу это комментировать, надеюсь, всем понятно, что такого рода заявления не делают чести тем, кто продвигает, отстаивает такую политику в Белом доме.
Then came the Donbass conflict. A wave of new accusations fled on Russia. This time the Russian-American relationship entered a new level of tense talking. The Pentagon urged Russia to clarify troop movements on Ukrainian border in Donbass region and said that the US will stand next to Ukraine and won't let Russia to question Ukraine's territorial integrity. President Biden offered to hold a summit with Vladimir Putin. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that other countries shouldn't find movements of military units in Russian territory worrisome because Russia doesn't pose a threat to other states, including Ukraine. He also stressed that the events in Donbass were Ukraine's internal conflict, and Russian troops have never taken part in it. Analysts say that US-Russia ties are worse than during the Cold War. Sergei Lavrov said if the US shuns a mutually respectful dialogue on the basis of a balance of interests, they would live in conditions of Cold War or worse. Lavrov said that Moscow has had a positive attitude to Biden's proposal to hold a summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin, but added that Russia still needs to analyze all the aspects of the initiative. Biden is trying to keep his promises he gave during the electoral campaign. He promised to punish Russia and slap with sanctions, and he did. The future of US-Russian relations will be more clear after the meeting of Biden and Putin. On the other hand, Russia is not stepping back and keeps warning America not to jeopardize and intervene in their internal politics. Summarizing his 100 days in office, Biden once again reclaimed that Russia's actions will have consequences.
But I made very clear to Putin that we're not going to seek escalation, but their actions will have consequences.
But speaking of Biden's promises, there needs to be mentioned that Biden kept his promise and recognized the Armenian genocide after a century of rejection. Biden became the first US president to declare that the 1915 systematic massacre of Armenians constituted an act of genocide. Russia is not the only country that Biden's administration is having problems with and is trying to sanction. Next in this list comes Turkey. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has denounced Biden's recognition of the Armenian genocide as groundless and harmful to bilateral ties. Biden tried to temper the expected Turkish anger by calling Erdogan for the first time since taking office in January. The two leaders agreed to meet on the sidelines of the NATO summit in June. But Erdogan said that Biden needed to look in the mirror when calling a century-long event a genocide. But Biden chose his words very carefully and didn't mention Turkey's name in his announcement and said that this is not an accusation but an attempt to prevent future genocides. But if Turkey continues purchasing weapons from Russia, more sanctions will arrive on Turkey.